Ohio just happens to be the richest archaeological zone for the data that we're going to show tonight. The two principal cultures in North America that run parallel to the Jaredites and the Nephites of the Book of Mormon is called the Adena culture and the Hopewell culture. And they're just names. It could have been called anything, but that's the names that were given. And the Hopewell culture is the one that fits the Nephite timeline. What we have in southern Ohio, we have 534 fortified enclosures that are built like they are described by Captain Moroni in the Book of Alma. Ditches, earthen banks, wooden palisades, and then towers every so often. This is what we have throughout Ohio. We have in Ohio 1,700 village sites where these people lived. Their population was very, very large, and they were farmers. And they fought a defensive campaign, which is exactly what the Nephites did in the Book of Mormon. Dr. Hugh Nibley tells us this is a priesthood manual called An Approach to the Book of Mormon. It was used in 1957, and a lot of you probably read this. I was in third grade in 1957, but some of you senior members here may have even had this book. You probably got it in your home. But Dr. Nibley was very careful to tell that the Nephites did not build out of stone. They made their cities out of wood, earth, and copper. And so what we would find today, we won't find anything left of the wood, but we will find the earth, and we should find the copper. But that's what they built out of. When Nephi broke away from the first land of first inheritance, he immediately set out and built a temple like unto Solomon's temple in 1 Nephi. And he said he built it out of wood, not stone. And then you jump 400 years into the Book of Mormon till you get to wicked King Noah's time. And wicked King Noah has taxed all the Nephites, and they're complaining bitterly because of the taxation. And at this time, they tell us that King Noah built his palaces, his synagogues, his temples, all out of wood. No stone for the Nephites. It's wood, 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 and I can't emphasize that enough. We read that there were some type of elephants in Americas. We know the woolly mammoth was here, we know the mastodon was here, but the early archaeologists and historians that dug in the mounds and the swamps and the earth banks of the Midwest found what they call the American pachyderm. They found a skeleton of an elephant, something like what we'd see today, but yet he was a little bit different. He was smaller. But they found these bones, and this is in Archaeology of Ohio by M.C. Reed, pages 116 and 117. And the reason they also said what was important about the find is that these bones, because they were preserved so well in the ground, they were just as good as the Hopewell bones of the people who lived here. And so therefore, they concluded that this American pachyderm was contemporary with the mound builder culture, side by side. These are pipes from Iowa. These were dug out of Davenport, Iowa in the 1800s, showing what looks like this American pachyderm may have looked like. They tell us, the archaeologists tell us, of course, that the Native Americans did not know how to smelt, and yet in Ohio, this is Bill Connor. He has a website, and Bill's website, he talks about the smelters that are found throughout Ohio. We have 31 of them. This right here is a mold. This is where the molten iron was poured in, and this is the top of the iron axe head. Here's the other side. Here you can see the axe head made out of iron, still in the mold. Ohio, 31 smelters. Next one. We're also told the Native Americans did not work in stone. They would not carve graven images, yet throughout the Midwest we find stone idols practically in every state. This one here was found in Chicago. You can see it today. It's at Fort Dearborn on the north side of the city of Chicago. It stands about 4 feet high. It's called the Wabansi stone. The top of it here is shaped like a bowl. It's hollow, and the liquid you would pour in the top spews out of the mouth. It's really quite an ugly stone, but it's there on display, the Wabansi stone. We find oil lamps. This one here was from La Crosse, Wisconsin area, kicked up by a farmer in the 1960s. Here's where the oil would be poured in. This is where the wick would be to light the flame. And the thing is so Mediterranean, it just hurts. But of course, what do the archaeologists tell us? Nobody here before Columbus Therefore, it has to be fake. What do you think of that? This is 400 to 500 AD, found in a cave in West Virginia. It's made out of cedar. Cedar doesn't rot. It's pretty durable. This is a statue. It's worn from weathering. As you can see, it's a personage holding some kind of an animal. What do you think it is? Looks like the Christ with the shepherd, doesn't it? The lost sheep. Can't say for sure, but it sure looks like it. But there it is, and this is found next to a Hopewell site in West Virginia. Southern Illinois has produced a variety of very strange and unusual artifacts. Very, very Egyptian in flavor. Here we have this Egyptian fellow here. This is an Egyptian cartouche. Here we have these lozenges, and we have 3 pyramids standing here. There were so many things like this found in southern Illinois that the bottom 1/3 of the state is called Little Egypt. And that has stuck. And look at the next slide, please. If you go there, this is what you'll see in southern Illinois. You will find the name of Egypt or Egyptian in many of the businesses throughout all the small towns in southern Illinois. Here's the Egyptian State Bank chain. Tell you the truth, I don't think I put my money in that bank, but that's all right. Here it is, the Egyptian State Bank. You'll see the Egyptian Hospital, you'll see the Egyptian Humane Society, and et cetera, and et cetera. It's very, very common, and it's very unusual to see, but it's all in southern Illinois where these unusual artifacts are found. Wherever the Promised Land was, we know right off the bat when the Jaredites arrived in their Promised Land, they found copper. And they dug the copper, and they cast up mighty heaps of earth to get the ore of gold, of silver, of iron, and of copper. They had to have a rich mineralized area somewhere. Next one, please. And when the Nephites arrived, they also had copper very early on. And let's read this one from Jeremiah 1:8. We multiplied exceedingly and spread upon the face of the land, and became exceedingly rich in gold, silver, precious things, and fine workmanship of wood in buildings and in machinery, and also in iron and copper. So, where are the ancient copper mines? Who knows? Where are they? Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Here's Wisconsin, where I reside. This sits up on top. This is Main State of Michigan over here. This is called Upper Peninsula. The copper is right here. Just a huge vein of copper. And this is where we find ancient copper mines. The oldest mine, carbon material taken from the mine, has been dated at 2174 BC by the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. That is a fit for the Jaredite timeline of copper mining. These copper mines up here were worked until 3 to 4, possibly even 500 AD, and then they were worked no more. And that is a fit for our Hopewell people, which is a Nephite timeline fit. Copper. Now, also up here, like the state of Utah, Upper Peninsula around the Great Lakes here is a highly mineralized area. We find tin, we find gold, we find silver, all kinds of precious metals, and of course, ore is up there as well. So it's a highly mineralized area, and it was worked all during the Book of Mormon time period. Next one. Here's a picture of copper points, which are like ones that are up here. These are all hardened copper. These are not smelted. These are cold hammered. It's a lost process that we cannot duplicate today. Here's some more copper. These are smelted copper points. Here's your ruler for size. These are all up here on the table. Notice these holes here where they were pinned onto a wooden shaft. Only one place has that pin been found intact. It was at Waukesha, Wisconsin, out of a dig. And the pin was an iron pin that was used to hold this copper into its wooden shaft. Again, a piece of iron showing up. And this is all Hopewell timeline. These Hopewell people also had flutes and pipes, musical instruments. They were highly cultured. This one's out of Ohio. And they adorned their buildings in all kinds of places with some highly stylized copper carvings. Notice this guy's beak here. We find in the copper mounds, in the mounds of Ohio, we find a bird we call it a parrot, but we now know it's really a parakeet. It's a North American parakeet. Today, that parakeet only lives in the bottom tip of the state of Florida. But during the Hopewell timeline, which is the Book of Mormon timeline, that parakeet lived in the state of Ohio, because we find them in their graves. For some reason, they treasured them and they used them. They kept their beaks and their claws for burial purposes. We don't know how it was used. But what that tells us is that at that time, it had to be a warmer climate. It was a much warmer climate for that bird to exist throughout the Ohio area in such great numbers. Helaman 6:10. Now the land south was called Lehi, and the land north was called Mulek, which was after the son of Zedekiah. For the Lord did bring Mulek into the land north, and Lehi into the land south. Now, the archaeological record for the Hopewell people, it is divided into two groups. Let's take a look. Up here, 2 Nephi 10 and 20. We have been driven out of the land of our inheritance, but we have been led to a better land, for the Lord has made the sea our path, and we are upon an isle of the sea. Let's stop right there for a minute. If you lived in the Eastern Hemisphere during this time period, anything away from that landmass in the body of water was considered an island. Because basically they didn't know how big those places were. So if they set sail and they hit land, it was automatically called an island. So here we have an isle of the sea being identified for the Promised Land. And then here, the Native Americans, even to this day, if you ask them, what do you call the land of North America? And they say, we call it Turtle Island. That's the name for the North American continent, Turtle Island. And then Helaman 6:10, which we've already read about Mulek into the land north, and then Lehi bringing into the land south. We have two principal tribes of Indians that make up all the Indians on the eastern half of North America. The largest of them is the Algonquin family. They make up the most. And we're told in the Book of Mormon that the Mulekites were far more numerous than the Nephites. And the Mulekites, I'm suggesting, followed here. This is where the Native Americans, who are of the Algonquin lineage, tell us they came into the North American continent through the St. Lawrence Seaway into the Great Lakes and settled in North America from the center outward. They would be the group to the north. The Iroquois nation that today resides in western New York, they tell us that they landed somewhere on the coast of Florida, Georgia, or the Carolinas. They don't know the exact spot. And they originally lived in the south. And eventually, after the mound builder culture was eliminated, they moved up into here, and these guys moved into there, and of course they became their mixing. So we have two principal groups of Indians. And again, notice, they all come across from the east. And we'll bring this up again. Next one. This here is a report by Milton R. Hunter of the Quorum of the 12, oral history given by Chief Shupshi. It was a Potawatomi. He's of the Algonquin family. Indianapolis, Indiana, June 22nd, 1951. This is pretty important. Chief Shupshi, explanation of the migration of people to ancient America, who the peoples were and where they came from. He said that the Indians had traditions of their ancestors living in America continuously from Adam's time, and that the population on this land had been augmented from time to time by 4 or 5 migrations. These migrations came to America from the east. It is evident that the Indians' tradition agrees with the Book of Mormon in several important respects. He said that one group of colonists came to America about 4,000 years ago in boats like tortoise shells. This migration would compare favorably with the Jaredites. Chief Lahuru, or Chief Shupshi, explained that their traditions also told of groups of colonists who compared favorably with the Nephites and the Mulekites. He also told of the coming of the yellow race, and that they brought to America the bad practice of scalping, human sacrifice, and much sex immorality. Part of these people married and merged with the Indians and became the Aztec Indians of Mexico, and others moved eastward across the U.S. and became the Algonquins, or they became mixed with the Algonquin people. Isn't that something? Now, I want to point out this up here about the boats. Let's see, where are the boats? We're here, tortoise shells. Interestingly enough, if you pick up a book by the Ojibwe tribe of Algonquin people, they will tell you straight out that the boats their ancestors came across to America